So this is the first segment of this kind. The date is March 16th of 2024, and the NSX community, the Arizona NSX family, immediate family, has been impacted by the loss of Jim Cozzolino. We lost Jim within the past couple hours. I'm going to talk about Cozzolino. He's probably one of the most polarizing people I've ever met. And at the same time, you can't do anything but love the guy. Wonderful energy. I didn't know Jim that well, especially over the past 6 or 7 years. We have phone conversations, and usually it's about events. They're good phone conversations. He was a firefly. He was a firecracker, but an amazing individual. Let me tell you my Cozzolino story. I moved to Arizona in 2014, brought my NSX out here, and Jim was one of the first people I got to meet in this wonderful, car community that we have out here of NSX owners. Jim was always racing. He had the wide body NSX. I think it's the FXMD body kit. He does a NASA AZ. He knew his stuff. His NSX, his red NSX, I think he'd owned since it was brand new, 1991. He did all the wrenching on it, all the engine build. But when I had an issue and I couldn't afford to go to the local shop, or I couldn't get into the local shop, because people see us, you have an NSX does not mean you have money. It took me 20 years to get my car. And, people like Jim understood that. And so Jim made the offer. If you come to my house in Peoria, which I live in Gilbert, so those of you that aren't familiar with the layout of Phoenix, that's a good 50-something miles, all freeway miles. So it's about an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours on a bad day. But his proposition was always, if you drive the vehicle over to my house, I'll do the work for cheaper. And so it was a good deal. But the thing that Jim did that a lot of people probably don't do is when you go to his house, he has a code. And the code is he will work on your vehicle. And if you just stand off on the side and do social media and don't really pay attention, he's going to charge you more money than if you get your hands dirty. He will show you how to do things with the car. So he showed me how to remove the axle on my NSX, how to pull it out, how to take it off, grease it, restuff it, put it back on, and I went over to his house a few times, and every time I just got super dirty. But his proposition was, if he helps you do it and you could learn how to do it on your own, then he only charge you hardly anything. You still charge you as you should and pay him as you should. But he taught me how to change the brakes, taught me how to completely take apart calipers and clean those. And for a lot of people, that's standard stuff, depending on where you are in the car person. But for other people, you don't even know how to change your own oil. But if there's anything I didn't know how to do, Cozzolino would teach me how to do it. Remember going into his kitchen, looking at the wall, and it was something out of a movie. Cozzolino had lived that life. I'm going off my memory because I hadn't been in his house, because he'd moved away for a business and then he moved back, and I hadn't been to his house since he's come back. And I think he's probably been back 6 or 7 years. But you look on the wall, and he used to be a horse jockey. I think he was in the Secret Service or something, like some really high up stuff. It's that wall that you see on TV shows where maybe there's a picture of them and the president, or maybe there's a picture of them and unattainable rock star. You know, it's just, he was a very multi-layered Italian man, real short guy, cursed like a sailor. I don't know how many cigarettes he smoked when I'd go over there. Just the craziest mouth. And I think the F word was his favorite word. Everybody's name got an F word attached to it. You know, this guy came over here and this lazy mother, you know, and we did this and that mother did that. And I said, don't do this. And he turned around and did it. And it was a blast. But you love the guy because he meant nothing but the best. He was the best. And I'm sitting here, you know, first off, he gave me the confidence to work on my NSX. I was terrified to work on my dream car. And because of him, I, you know, installed my own big brake kit, and I would empty my own oil and do all that kind of stuff. And again, some of you were like, well, no kidding, that's not rocket science, but it can be. And, you know, a vehicle that you waited 20 years to buy, you don't want to mess it up. You know, some of my old Hondas, I didn't care. I was underneath the hood, but this was different. But Cozzolino made sure it didn't feel different. We also took a few trips to Ace. You know, Ace is the place, I guess, to get parts, and he had a turbo NSX. And that also helped me make the decision to turbo my old NSX. I drove one up in Michigan and I fell in love, but right along with Cozzolino and knowing that he was one of the resources we had in town that really knew how to work on the cars gave me the confidence. And I would have had it installed at his house, except for he lived on the other side of the valley. And, you know, honestly, I've been kind of kicking myself because I was following the updates on social media, and most of his last few photos, IV bags, doctor visits, hospital visits. And I think one of his last posts that he put up in late February was, hey, they're letting me go home. It's like, great, he's going to be all right. But then I got a text message from a mutual friend of ours, and he said, you know, Cozzolino's in hospice, right? Or I didn't know if you knew it, but Cozzolino's in hospice. And I was like, no, I didn't know. So I texted Jim Cozzolino, and I called him up with a message, but I didn't expect for him to call back because at this point, if I'm being told, other people are being told his phone might be ringing off the hook, he might be asleep. I know he was, you know, when you're in hospice, you're not in a very good situation. And, you know, I Googled, you know, what's the average life expectancy for someone that's in hospice? And they say it could be a few weeks, up to 6 months. And I'm like, Jesus, you know, I just wanted to call him and talk to him. I wanted to get his story, and hopefully I get an opportunity to get that story from his kids, you know, Eric and Ryan. And I think he may have had a daughter as well. I don't know. I believe so. I don't know. But I know I've hung around with Eric before, and I've probably met Ryan. But Ryan ended up giving me a call back or texted me and said, hey, this is Ryan. I'm checking my dad's info, his communications. You know, he's not able to come to the phone. He's, you know, but if you ever want to talk, give me a call. I go, okay. Yep. So I scheduled a time to call him, and he was unavailable. But I'm kicking myself a little bit because Jim's been asking me to come and see him for the past couple of years. And I'm like, yeah, I have to get over there. I have to get over there. I have to get over there. And I just never made it over there. And I know I'm not a bad friend. In fact, it really upsets me to even the thought of people being disappointed in me that I consider friends really bothers me. And I just couldn't find the time to go and see him. You know, I have other friends that I haven't seen in years. And I have to keep telling myself that because I wanted to go see him. I just never had the time, or he didn't have the time. But I think in the end, it was more I didn't have the time. I stopped going to Jim a while ago to work on my car. Well, there's the comedy of it is he has a 91, and there's a big difference between the NSXs over the years, and sometimes he would, confuse the differences. But, he started having the health problems. He had some issues with his neck, and, he had a lift next to his house, and I didn't want to be one of those customers that had this, he's a little guy, okay, to have this little halfway broken physically guy working on his car. And it wasn't me worried about the car. It was me looking over at this tiny, huggable, foul-mouthed sailor type of person looking up and just kind of straining to work on my vehicle. I did not want to be in that situation. And that's why I stopped going to Cozzolino for work. Never stopped calling him when I had a question. We've talked on the phone half a dozen times over the past few years, and there are always 30 to 45-minute phone conversations, whether I'm calming him down and telling him everything's going to be all right, or he's offering help for these major events that we're planning. By the time I really got around to trying to make that effort, it's too late. Like I said, he's a loving father and a loving husband and just a great, great person. He told me there's a photo that he and I took together at NS Expo 2015 in Palm Springs, and he said he has it framed on his wall. So I guess in all that, I'm never going to forget Jim Cozzolino for giving me the confidence, not only in myself working on my cars, but also for being that super special guy, not only to me, but to hundreds of other people. And there's people that in our circles that know him so much more, so much better, especially the track guys. This is a huge loss for the NASA AZ, all the cliche losses with the family, but I just wish I would have made that trip over to see Jim. So if there's anyone in your life that you keep promising a connection with, find the time to do it. I have a few friends that are, I wouldn't say on hospice because that's what Jim was, but people that are on borrowed time. They're on house money. And you got to reach out before it's too late. So, Jim Cozzolino, you're one of the realest. We're all going to miss your posts. We're going to miss your conversations. And just knowing that you're no longer with us physically just feels different.